If we get no's, we have the therapist call and say something. Johnny was here last week and he was working on, I'm a speech pathologist, so R's, and he was doing a great job on those. I hate for him to miss a week and possibly slip back a little bit and us have to learn all this over again. I would love to get him in. I know he was proud of himself. We were proud of him. I have appointments in this time. Which one works for you? So the therapists are responsible for filling their caseload too, and making sure those cancellations and no-shows are rescheduled.
Hello, and welcome to the Private Practice Owners Club. I'm Nathan Shields, and today I've got one of our great head coaches of the Private Practice Owners Club coaching program, Tracy Bond, and she is also the owner of On the Spot.
The
Is it On the
Spot
Spot?
Clinic.
On the
The
Spot
Spot
Clinic?
Clinic. No,
The
the
Spot Clinic.
Spot. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, I'm bad. Sorry. Spot
It's
Clinic.
it's speech PT and OT, however you slice it. So
Yeah.
Spot, however.
And you do pediatrics, and
Yes,
you've got three, soon to be five clinics in Alabama, right?
that's right.
Couldn't tell from your accent.
Right.
Well, this is why we love to have you, is because obviously, if you have three clinics and you're going to five clinics, and now, just so everyone knows, Tracy kind of has nothing to do with her clinics at this point. She has stepped aside and let the leaders take over. And that in and of itself should tell you a lot about her capabilities as an owner and the experience that she brings to a conversation like we're going to have today. So thanks for taking the time and being willing to talk to me, Tracy.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, as I talk to potential guests, the question that I ask them typically when we're trying to decide what topic to speak on, if they don't come prepared with one, is what lights you up? What gets you excited? What are things that you like talking about, you could expound upon and not feel like it's taking a lot of brain energy to do so? And I was excited when you said that you wanted to talk about bonus programs and maybe highlight
Yes.
your bonus program, because thinking back on it, I don't think I've had an episode. I'm trying to think through 300 episodes, but
Yeah.
I don't think we've had an episode dedicated to, some examples of bonus programs that owners are sharing with their teams. We've talked about it in different episodes, but to spend an episode on it is really cool. And so I'm excited to hear what you've got and what you can share, and I'll share what we had
Yes.
and
Good.
and go from there. But to start the conversation, tell me a little bit about, when did you decide that you needed to start a bonus program? Did you have this idea from the very get-go before hiring your first person, or what kicked it into gear?
I didn't when I hired my first person because at that point in time I was flying by the seat of my pants.
Oh,
And I did not start coaching until about a year in is when I got a coach. So
you hired a
I
coach a year into ownership?
yes, and I opened in 2019. So
Oh, wow. So that's pretty recent. Okay.
yeah, December of 19. So, and
Congratulations.
then of course COVID hits.
That hurt.
But I didn't just because I really didn't think about it, but it was
Sure.
just, all of these things are ever evolving and I add things and I change things all the time. So that's a good point to make is anything. And then the other thing that's ever evolving is job descriptions because
Yeah.
you change job descriptions for people all the time. So just a side note. But
Mhm.
I was probably about 2 years in before I started bonusing.
Mhm.
Biggest reason is because we wanted to make sure the company was viable. So our bonuses are there as long as the company is making money, making profit, and a viable company. So that has been stressed to employees. Luckily, knock on wood, we have not had to cut bonuses up to this time. Hopefully, we won't see any Medicaid changes that will cause us to do that, but we don't know right now what's going to happen.
Knock on wood.
Yes, exactly. We're just going to keep it as is for the time being.
Yeah. So did they approach you about it, or were you seeing a drop in production that you needed to incentivize? Or did you, through coaching, just recognize this would be good to incentivize them to produce more?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
And because the coaches gave me some guidance on how to do it. And I
Okay.
started out just bonusing therapist, and
Sure.
then went through the whole gamut. And about a year ago, I started bonusing all the staff members.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
except our techs are not bonused.
We always
Yeah.
had a hard time coming up with a real KPI for our techs.
Yes.
You
Me
know what I
too.
mean? Because they're so intricately involved. We actually we kind of judged. the tech's capability to get the therapist out of the clinic approximately the same time that the patients walked out of the clinic at the end of the day. But
Well,
how do you bonus that? I don't know. So I know
true.
what you're talking about, but I'm glad that you highlighted something that if someone's starting a bonus program, I wouldn't expect them to cover bonuses across the board. That might be a little, if this is your first dipping your toe in the water with bonuses, you might want to just stick with providers and let's try to smooth that program out before we spread it across the clinic, right?
And do a very small bonus. Just because
Uh-huh.
mine may be higher than yours doesn't mean that's what you need to do. Most people I have found are glad to get anything.
Yeah.
It just shows them that their work is valued. So
Mhm.
I would not start out with a big number. You want a number that you can grow into.
Now, so as people are considering, you brought up the amount in which
Mhm.
you have bonus, and I'm sure there's tiers to it. How did you fall upon that number?
A lot of it was calculations. We had to look at what our average revenue per visit was to make sure that we were covering salaries, covering overhead, covering what else am I trying to thought?
Benefits, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you had to cover you had to know your
profit.
cost per visit.
Yes.
Right? Know your cost per visit, know your reimbursement per visit on average, right?
Yes.
And then, man, I can imagine the calculations you went through because you had to figure out, okay, based on our average provider salary
Mhm.
that we currently have, what are they producing? And what is the break even point, right? And break even covers all the expenses plus 10% to make sure you're generating something. And then finding that uh, for us, it was a per week visit number. So many visits per week, right? I don't know
Mhm.
how you did, but we knew what that number was, and then we
Mhm.
knew if they went maybe 10% above that, which equated to like 5 visits more per week,
Mhm.
then we were willing to start bonusing.
Okay.
Does that sound familiar, or did you do something different?
I have heard people that do that. I played with this for a long time. And to be honest, I knew nothing about statistics until I started coaching. I was just surviving. So learning statistics was a big thing for my company.
And it made a big difference, I'm assuming,
Oh, huge. Yes,
right?
huge difference. So the way I bonus all clinicians is, and it's a convoluted way, but I'll kind of explain the why first. I had one clinic that was always a lot more productive than the other two, and I
Okay.
paid hourly. So if they had a cancellation, they didn't care. They could talk to somebody else or be on their phone or whatever.
They didn't
And
get
then
paid.
do what?
Did they get paid okay, so they still got paid if someone canceled.
Yes.
Got it.
The
Understood.
only time that they didn't get paid is if the first one of the day or the last one of the day canceled. So they'd come in
Yeah.
late, leave early.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
that was when they didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yes.
Okay.
So looking at that, I saw my clinic that was 80% productive overall versus my clinic that was 65 productive overall. And I was like, they're getting paid the same amount. I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And I had started a bonus structure kind of similar to yours.
Okay.
And it was so stinking complicated. And for me to figure,
Okay.
again, I'm not a numbers person. I'm
Sure.
learning the stats as I go. So when I started looking at it, I started doing the same thing, looking at productivity and that kind of thing, and then bonusing on that.
Right.
But I didn't feel like the bonus I was giving was good enough for those people who were performing well. So
Oh,
I
okay.
sat down and tried to think of how can I change this so that everybody is getting paid based on their work. So, like I said, I looked at all of the data and saw exactly what we needed to cover everything and profit. And then I also added in a little bit for growth. They're going to be asking for raises and they're going to be asking for a bonus increase. So I also figured in, I think about 15% for that
Okay.
one.
Sure.
But that's kind of how I started. And then I said, I know how to do this. I mean, I know what I want to do. Now, how do I do it? So that's when we came up with those numbers.
So
So
do you bonus on like I did, a number of visits per week or a number of units per week or a total amount charged per week or something like that?
we do.
Units per week. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So some physical therapy clinics might, like we didn't include modalities as viable units. I'm assuming you're the same.
No, we can bill everything. We're
Okay.
one-on-one with our kids, but we
Well,
bill
we use like electrical stimulation and
right.
ultrasound and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
those wouldn't count towards your units billed per week.
Okay. Yeah, all of ours is anything that's
Okay.
billable, we count.
Okay. Gotcha. And so they have to meet a minimum number of units billed per week in order to get well, I'm sure there's a baseline level to justify their job, but then
Yes.
there's another X% more in order to get the bonus.
Yes. What I did was I had all of my staff tell me how many hours they wanted to work. Could be 20, could be 40, 30, whatever. Tell me how many hours a week you want to work. That is set in stone. Unless you come back and change it and want to change it for the next payroll, it's set in stone. So once everybody told me that, I went to their hourly rate and cut everybody's hourly rate by 25%. So, did we not have an uproar for a while? But the way I explained it was with this bonus program, the more productive you are, the higher your bonus is going to be, and you're going to actually make more. So,
I
what we
see.
did was if somebody worked 40 hours a week, they had to be 50% productive. So, they had to bill 20 hours a week for a base pay.
To
And
justify
that,
their decreased salary. Yeah. Yeah.
so for example, if they made $40 an hour, then now they're making $30 an hour. But, and then after that 50%, for every unit they bill above that, they are bonused.
Oh, okay.
So, like it might be, and this is all depending on everybody's numbers, everybody has to be different. But for speech, it might be $20 because we're untimed. So 30 minutes is a speech session.
Right.
And then for OT and PT, I think PT is 9 and OT is 7. And
Mhm.
again, that's based on reimbursement and that's per unit. So that's times 4.
Oh,
So
okay.
the way we did that was when I announced it and had all of these people up in arms, I decided, okay, I'm going to give you 6 months to fill your schedule. And you don't have to do it for 6 months. Well, my productive clinic said, we want to try it now. We'll be your guinea pigs.
Oh, that's cool.
So they actually started it 2 months after I
Mhm.
announced it. But we gave them a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
On that spreadsheet, they could put in how many hours they were scheduled, what their previous hourly rate was, and then it would calculate their old hourly salary per week. And then then you put in, well, it calculates what your new salary will be, new hourly rate, and then what the current base is, how many units they need to hit 50%. And then they could go in and add their units that they build for the week, and it would tell us how many units did they build over that 50%. And then over that 50%, they would get the bonus. But what we wanted to do with this and why we let them do this was because we wanted to prove to most of them that they would be making more if
Mhm.
they increase their productivity.
Yeah.
And it has worked very well, extremely well. So we turned that out in June of 23 was the
Mhm.
deadline.
Mhm.
I had the first clinic start in February. And then oddly enough, I had all of my therapists other than 2 go to the bonus structure before June.
Oh, wow.
So they
Interesting.
all saw how much they were making. And some of them were making $400 or $500 a paycheck more.
Right.
But I can afford to pay them that because they're 90% productive.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you what kind of productivity changes you saw, but going, even if they
Huge,
went, what's that?
huge.
So the 60% productive clinic went to what? What are they
I think
averaging?
they're about 83 overall.
Great. Great. And it sounds like the 80% clinic went to 90.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
Yep.
That is so cool. And I'm assuming that going along with it, when sometimes when clinics are running hot like that, they're like 90% productive. There's a lot of complaining or whining, if you will.
Mhm.
Man, we're so busy though. I can't keep this up or that kind of thing. But when they know that their paycheck is tied to their production, some of those
Mhm.
complaints tend to fall by the wayside. Did you see the same?
Yes, I sure did.
Yeah.
Because what we told them is we're going to let you have some autonomy in this. You're
Yeah.
going to be over what your hours that you want to work and whatever productivity you want. You have to be there that number of hours. If you want to bill 20 hours out of 40 hours, you can get your base pay.
You get your base salary. That
Yeah,
was 75% of what you had before. Yeah. I see.
yes. But if you want more, you just have to work for it.
So you did a little bit of a hybrid there. When I
Too.
say hybrid, it's a smaller base salary
Hmm.
and on the back end a greater reimbursement rate, either via bonuses or it's not an eat what you kill model, which is completely based on production. And I've
Right.
had that interview before in the past with some owners, but they took the same approach that you did. And that was they didn't say this starts tomorrow. They
Hmm.
said, we're going to show you what the benefit is over time. You can opt in whenever you want, but we're
Hmm.
going to show you based on your current production levels and what you could produce more, how that would affect your take home pay.
Here's
And
another thing that
that
I did.
tended to turn a lot of minds and some people were just like, yeah, I know I can make $200 a week more. I just like the security of the salary. I mean,
And I can
some
get
personalities are like that. What are you going to do?
that.
But you know what? You want to feed your tigers, and
Mhm.
I'm more than willing to pay them more and let the other ones just get what they get.
We implemented a policy. I always have a mantra every year for my staff, and this was in 23. So my 2023 model or mantra was own your own caseload. So then we trained the therapist when they had a cancellation or no show and the front desk can't reschedule them. It's their responsibility to call and see if they can get them rescheduled because every cancellation is money out of their pocket. So
Mhm.
we kind of have a script. Front desk never asks, do you want to reschedule? It's always, we have appointments at this time. Which one of those work for you?
Yes.
Sometimes we still get no's. So if we get no's, we have the therapist call and say something. Johnny was here last week and he was working on, I'm a speech pathologist, so R's, and he was doing a great job on those. I hate for him to miss a week and possibly slip back a little bit and us have to learn all this over again. I would
Mhm.
love to get him in. I know he was proud of himself. We were proud of him. I have appointments this time. Which one works for you? So the therapists are responsible for filling their caseload too and making sure those cancellations are and no shows are rescheduled.
I really like how you gave them control over their caseload because I think the default mentality for most therapists is patients come to me, I can't control it. If they
Mhm.
cancel, what am I going to do if they're sick? And so I went to the hospital. Okay, or bring me the new patients. If we're not getting new patients, that's like your job. Where's the marketing department? They need to bring me
Mhm.
new patients. But giving them ownership of their caseload changes the dynamic, changes the mentality and the attitude towards that, such that now they're thinking, oh, I giving them control and giving them responsibility for the product, i.e., their paycheck. Now they could say, oh, if I step in now and really take control of my schedule, they will see benefits. But I know the conversation was around that, but it's also part of telling them when you step in and control your schedule, your patient's results get better,
I
right?
agree.
And so when you roll it out, it sounds like you didn't necessarily tie it to patient results, but have
It
they
was.
recognized that over time?
We haven't tracked that simply because with pediatrics, we see these kids for a year,
Oh, yeah, I
years,
can see the
whatever.
difference. Yeah.
So it's hard to really have a track on that. The other thing that helped with us getting the therapist on board was we just pointed out when you are talking to parents and trying to get them back on the schedule, it shows them you care and you care about their plan of care and you want to see them to make sure and that they're coming in. And also, it hurts another child if we've got a waiting list and that child can't get in. And then
Exactly.
it also hurts the therapist, their bottom line. So there's
Mhm.
three little branches off of that.
Yeah.
So it worked. It worked well for us.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, because I've seen the same thing either with personal experience or those of others that I've talked to, that when the provider makes the call, the the patients really appreciate it, frankly. And those providers that take that call seriously
Mhm.
tend to have lower cancellation rates.
I agree.
Right. And it's all in the scripting. It's how they say it. They need to come across with care. They need to come across with a focus on patient results.
Mhm.
But they have, but some of it is like, hey, remember at the initial evaluation, we agreed to this plan of care that was such and such frequency over such a period of time. And if we're not able to agree to that and stay true to it, then I cannot guarantee you the results that you're hoping for.
Exactly. Yeah, I love
And so
that.
we need to be bought in. We need to be in agreement on this together. If there's some kind of conflict, and like one of the nuances is not when do you want to reschedule. That's like the worst possible. I hated when my front desk asked that question. When would you like to reschedule? But rather, we have days and times available here, here, and here. Which one would you like to take? Right?
And we got in the habit of saying, "Do you want to reschedule?" So all that is
Oh,
a
even
yes, no
worse.
question. And I was like, "Yeah, that's not working for me."
No, that doesn't work because people will typically default to no.
Yes,
Right?
that's what I told them. That's exactly what I told them.
So our bonus program, I love how you laid it out, and I wish we would have done the same, but this was so long ago. Just to say, hey, you guys are busy, you're doing your thing. This is what it's going to be like. Ours was just simply a bonus program, and I like how yours was tied to increased production, but we tried to help them understand that we
Uh-oh.
wanted to recognize their increase in production. We
Yes.
especially wanted to recognize when maybe they took on a few extra patients because someone was on vacation,
Mhm.
right? So if you're going to put in the extra hours to see the extra visits, then we want to bonus you. So,
I'll tell you what else that's helped with. If somebody comes to us for a raise, we look back and see what their bonus has been for the last year and what their average productivity has been. So if they've been on average 80% productive, then we say, okay, let's figure this out if you were 85% productive. So why don't, I want you to control your own salary. I want you to make as much money as you can make. Don't leave money on the table. So this year, let's see if we can get you up to 85% or 83%, because you'll make X number of dollars more, which is equivalent to or more than what you're asking for anyway.
and when
So
they're
we haven't
looking,
given raises in a couple of years.
oh, really? Because they
Mhm.
can just control it themselves. So
Yep.
when they're asking for a raise, are they asking for a raise on the base salary or are they asking for an increase in the benefit per unit?
Bonus. They're asking for increase in bonus.
Oh, gotcha. So they want to be bonused more. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's hard to do if they're stuck in the 60, 75% production range, right?
Yeah, if they're 60 or 70%, they're probably not going to make as much as they did last year. Not last year, but when they were on the old salary and bonus structure.
Yeah.
They pretty much have to make 75 or better percent. At 75%, they kind of break even, few dollars here and there, but by
Mhm.
80, they're seeing a difference in their paycheck. And I even had some at one point in time that were 95% productive
They were crushing
because she was trying to buy a house and she was trying to get as much money as she could. So she would get off the clock to do notes and do all of these things that she could do off the clock.
it.
And I actually had to put a cap on it and said, we're capping at 90% because the other thing that she did was she would say, well, I don't have time to call patients and I don't have time to clean and I don't have time to do this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, it's part of your job, and we've got to have everybody participating in those things too. So let's cap it at 90%, unless there's an extenuating circumstance that your manager can determine from
It
there.
can always override, but there's a conversation that's planned. Everyone knows ahead of time. right? It's approved, et cetera, especially
And
if
it's
vacations
huge.
and sick days come in
Yes.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you know. It's huge to lost my train of thought. Oh, to pay them every paycheck. I was just doing the bonuses quarterly. That was why it was taking me so long. So doing it every paycheck so they see that money, that extra money coming in every 2 weeks, they like.
Yeah, we had the same thing. They got bonused per week, but it came in, but that bonus just accumulated over the 2 week payroll
Yes,
period, right? Got paid
exactly.
every paycheck. I have had some people that do just fine paying it quarterly, right? We had David on the group call on Wednesday who said he allows them the opportunity to track their bonuses on a regular basis, but when he pays out, he pays that quarterly
Mhm.
bonus. Whatever works for you, right? There's nothing set in stone here. And I think what's really important is to not get too complicated. And just tell me if this is if your providers are able to, but are they able to track what their bonus is going to be at the end of the week? It shouldn't be rocket science. You show them the formula, you get, or you hit this number, you get X amount of dollars, or you hit this many units, you get X amount of dollars. They're able to track it themselves. If they're not able to do that, then the bonus is just like this ethereal thing. They're like, maybe I get a couple $100 next week. You want to make it available to them so that they understand exactly what they're going to make when that paycheck hits,
That
right?
spreadsheet that we provided them to show the difference between their old hourly rate and their current one with the bonus, they can do that every week if they want to.
Hmm. Yeah. So they're doing the same calculations you're doing. And
Mhm.
I think that's super important and important to highlight
Yes.
because you don't want to make it super complicated, something that they understand,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And they can figure it out themselves. That's great. I I love how you did it because it incentivized things. We saw the same thing when we bonused with visits per week. They still had to meet a certain number of skilled units per visit.
Yep.
Yours inherently does that, right? Because
It does.
as
Hmm.
they max out the units, they're going to get a higher bonus. Um, Ours was visits per week, but they still had to hit an minimum average of skilled visits per week. You couldn't see the number of patients that we wanted to see and just build 2 units for an hour of care, right?
Yes.
That doesn't work. That going back to your thing about it has to be viable for the company
Mhm.
in order for this to work. And to get back to something that you said before we push record is you I mean, you're presenting it like we plugged this in and then it just worked for the last 2 years. But you told me you've had to go through a few iterations of this to get it right.
Probably more than one hand.
Mhm.
So over time, it's changed a lot. At the beginning, it was only bonusing therapists and it was quarterly and it was completely crazy to keep up with. And then it evolved a little bit to we were paying hourly and this bonus was just teeny, teeny, tiny. And
Mhm.
it was still, and then we paid monthly. So now it's evolved to the weekly thing that works better.
Mhm.
And it's working.
Okay.
But that's for my clinic. Everybody has to do, like you said, everybody has to do exactly what's best for their clinic. These are just examples.
So how did you say how without using these words, how did you tell them that you reserve the right to change the numbers and the bonus structure at any given time? How did you get that across?
That's part of the policy. So it's in the policy. And then,
Do you have the wherewithal to change this at any given time, that they'll be given
yes,
plenty of notice, et cetera, that kind of thing, right?
yes,
So
that's
they're
exactly
like, wait, I'm getting whiplash. You're making all these changes. And we're like, well, this isn't perfect. And I started having that, I started putting that kind of phrasing before we changed any program at towards the end of my ownership was like, we're going to try this out. We're going to see how it goes. All right. We want to make sure it works for everybody. If it doesn't work for me, I reserve the right to change it. If it doesn't work for you, then we'll have a conversation and we can change it again. Are we clear on that? That this isn't perfect. We're just going to try it.
yes.
And we can say that for any program we're going to roll out, right?
And we let them know that the company has to be viable. And the only way the company's viable is for them to put in the hours and see as many kids as they can and help as many families as they can. But that goes for everything. And it's still, after 5 years, still ever evolving. So we always tell them, here's the policy as of now, but there could be a change. We implemented a staff, can't think what it's called, staff initiative group with all the disciplines. And what we were finding is we put out a policy and then we'd have all these complaints back. So we decided to put this committee together to be able to look at each policy. So instead of sending one out that was kind of like a rough draft and we'd have to send it back, we looked at them coming in. They came in once a month. We changed all policies that were new to go out once a month. So at the beginning of the month, they
Okay.
would all go out. But in that meeting, we would have all the staff members review the policy, ask questions, clarify anything that we needed to add so that when it went out, it was set in stone. And
Mm.
that just empowered our committee members to handle some of the questions and complaints.
Oh, okay.
Because at that
Yeah.
point in time, they know the why that we're doing this. They helped write it. So they're accountable too.
Oh, that's a cool idea. So we talked about how to bonus providers.
Mhm.
Give us some general ideas on how you're bonusing other members of your teams.
Okay. Front desk staff, in Alabama, they don't make a whole lot of money. So we try to bonus them a little bit and they appreciate everything. So what we do is for every person they reschedule in the same week, if somebody cancels on Monday, as long as they're in by Friday, they get paid $3
Mm,
per reschedule.
okay.
If they reschedule for a different week, if they're on vacation and have to schedule the next week or whatever for makeup visits, then we give them $1
Mhm.
per cancellation or reschedule. The front desk, they're always rescheduling 20 or 30 patients a week. So, they can easily make an extra $60 a week, which is good for them.
Right.
But we can encourage them to own that caseload as well and try to
Mhm.
get those people in. And although it was small, they appreciated it.
Yeah, I think ours was they had to hit a couple of metrics. Arrival rate had to be above a certain percent. Their over-the-counter collections rate had to be over a certain percent.
Ours is 100.
Nice.
Everybody that walks in does not leave without paying.
What's your secret?
I didn't give them an option.
Well, I've been really pushing people to put credit cards on file. That makes it super easy. Do
Yeah.
you do that same thing or are they pulling out their credit cards every visit?
We have one clinic that pretty much bills credit cards every day.
Okay.
Then we have one clinic that's about half and half. And then we have one clinic that's about 25% with credit cards on
Mm.
file. The two that are not 100% say, well, people don't want to leave credit cards. So if that's the case, we use Square or Stripe and all these other ones, and we just run their credit cards. Some of them pay cash, some of them write checks,
Okay, sure.
but they just have to pay something. And when the first of the year rolls around and everybody's deductible changes, at that point in time, we also charge a little bit more to
Yep.
start whittling down that deductible.
Yep. Yep. I
And
got it.
then once their deductible's paid, they go back to whatever the copay is.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Right. And if they don't come prepared to provide their copay,
They're not seen.
okay, you don't let them back.
But that's a policy that in our new client handbook, that is a policy in there. So they know you pay every single time you come in. When you go to the doctor's office, you pay, and we're the same way.
You're not
The
walking
only
back
difference
until
is we can only see one patient at a time, where doctors can stack patients.
yeah. Oh, good for you. So yeah, we had some different metrics for the front desk. Who else on your team gets bonuses now at this point?
Our clinic managers are bonused. We look at metrics for them. We want them to make sure that the arrival rate is up there. So we want to make sure they're at 90% and they can follow up with their front desk and with the therapist to get it up there. We
Okay.
also look at the number of therapists that are meeting 75 to 80% productive. So 80% is for non-evaluating therapists and 75 is evaluating therapist. We plan to probably bump that up in the future. And most of them are doing more than that anyway. The number of cancellations and no-shows that weren't rescheduled, in-house referrals, and the average treatment charge.
So they get bonused on each of those metrics, or do they have to hit all of those metrics in order to get the bonus?
Well, if they hit 3 of those 7, they get this amount. If they hit 4 of these 7, they get this amount.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And that's
it's
just
just
kind of a
depends.
flat rate.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because
So
we did a
if they
little
hit,
bit. We did our clinic directors could not only get the per visit, I'm sorry, visits per week bonus as
Mhm.
treating providers, but as clinic directors, they also could get bonus. We had a profit sharing program, frankly, for so if the clinic was XYZ profitable, then they could get a bonus for that, and that was usually played out. You could get the weekly bonus, but the profit sharing was usually a quarterly thing.
we probably need to share that, share a conversation about that because I would love to do that. So I may be picking your brain.
Because you want those higher level people like like your clinic managers, you call them, to benefit from leading the team,
Mhm.
financially bonused for leading the team and the team hitting certain metrics. And you want them to
Yes.
be a part of that, right? So that I think that's really important as well,
Mhm.
especially for your leaders. How do they get bonused? If they're if the people over their purview is a large group, then maybe they should get bonused on the production of that large group.
Right. Our credentialing coordinator, what we want her to do is we want her to have all of the credentialing paperwork in from the day they sign the offer letter to 6 weeks after employment. So if we're able to do that within that 6 weeks, she gets $25 per new staff member. And she stays on it. I mean, she's on the phone constantly
I
with
bet.
Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medicaid to make sure they've got everything they need and to see where they need she needs to follow up. And
Right.
so we have increased our or decreased our amount of time that it takes to get credentialed significantly.
And is your billing team outsourced or are they in-house?
No, we do in-house.
And do you have bonuses for them as well?
We do. So for
Really?
intake, we've got ours kind of divided into three. We have front desk, and then we have intake, and then we have billing.
Okay.
So for our intake, we look at how many evaluations they scheduled within 2 days of getting the referral. If they actually show for the evaluation, reminder, and then if they can get the paperwork in from the case history and all the paperwork they have to do on the first visit, then they get another bonus.
Great. Yeah, so that really you're really bonusing them to speed up the process, right?
Mhm.
To have everything in and available because I mean, power has an element of speed to it, and the faster you can do something, the more powerful your clinics become.
I agree.
Yeah.
Our front desk, we look at advanced schedule. So we look on Friday every week, we look at the following week's schedule to see how many visits we have. Then the next Friday, we look to see exactly how many came in.
Mhm.
As long as it's a number, if somebody's canceled and they fill in that cancellation, it counts as a visit. So just the total number of visits.
And they
And
get a
then
bonus on that.
do what?
And they get a bonus on that.
Yes.
Nice.
And then we talked about the copay bonus. Um,
What about your billers? Is that related to your AR aging or how much they bring in or average reimbursement per visit? Or denials? What are some of the bonuses you share with them?
we bonus per insurance verification. So
Oh, okay.
supposed to verify insurance and get it back to our intake specialist to
Mm,
schedule within 24 hours. So
got
if
it.
it comes to them and they get to the intake patient and intake gets them and can call, they get a bonus. The other thing is any denials that we get in, if they're resubmitted in the same day, they get a bonus because we want to make sure we're staying on that.
Yes. Very
And
good.
then luckily we can get rid of the one that says we have to collect because we collect on site.
Yeah.
But that was something that was big because they would email or they would text before we were doing that and they wouldn't get them. So we were like, you have to speak to a person.
Yeah.
You can't just text or email because they're going to say they
Right.
didn't get it. So
Right.
you have to text, they have to talk
I could
to a
see
person.
like the only thing that I could see might be an issue is what if I got the insurance verification in 24 hours, but I wasn't really good at it. Maybe I just kind of guessed it because I've worked with this insurance company a lot. And then we get denied. and I turned it in 24 hours, then they could get bonused on both ends.
That comes back to
Yeah.
training your front desk or intake and your billers to get everything complete.
Yeah. I guess if this denials start stacking up, then there needs to be some conversations.
Exactly.
I get it. I get it. Very good. Well, I love how you did all these things, but I think it goes back to, I'm assuming you did calculations on all of this,
I did.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Before you implement it, you're just like, you didn't just think, $50 would be good here, or $50 would be good there, or $3 is good here. I'm sure you probably ran the numbers. If they hit these numbers, this is how it would affect my profit margin, right?
Yes,
I'm
just
sure you
like
did
for the
some of that.
bonuses, the therapist bonus having to come up with what it was per unit.
And is that something you did, or did you lean on your husband? Because I know he's a numbers guy, or did you leverage your bookkeeper or accountant? Who
At
helped you
that
through some of
time,
this?
I had my COO do it. She and I kind of talked through it, and she came up with some numbers and got back to me, and then we talked through that and then finalized whatever we were going to do.
And you probably took what, a month or two to kind of figure these things out before you even addressed
Probably
it.
longer than that. It was
Did you?
probably 3 months.
Yeah. So you took your time. It's not like, let's figure this out today and run with it next week, right?
Now, when I first started, I did that guessing game. Let's just give $20 here and $50 here. But when I first started, again, before my coach, I lived from my bank account. If I've got this amount in my bank account, I can spend this amount.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at stats, I realized real quick that ain't gonna work. So I
Yeah.
really had to analyze those better.
Well, that's a great reminder to people as especially if you're considering a bonus program, that you need to know your statistics
Mhm.
and you need to actually run those numbers before you roll out any program, right?
Absolutely.
And feel free to take your time, but leverage people who know numbers if you're not a numbers person, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of speech pathologists aren't numbers people particularly. Not sure about PTs. I would
Well,
think they're more analytical, so they may understand numbers more.
depends on the person, but we didn't get into physical therapy because we were numbers people, that's for sure.
That's how I am.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing so much. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation before we sign off?
Uh, Not that I can think of.
You covered a ton of stuff, so thank you so much for sharing. And if people wanted to reach out to you, are you available, whether email or social media?
Yes, I am. My email is Tracy, Tracy, at PTOclub.com.
Or
And
PPOClub.com, either one, right?
okay, yeah. And then I'm on Facebook as Tracy Hayes Bond. So they
Okay,
can reach me there too.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing again. I appreciate it, Tracy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. Have a good weekend. Bye.